And I'm going to share so you guys can kind of follow along with her slides that she has. Give me a sec. Oh, do you guys see the slides? Did I get it up right? I see them, but do you? Does anyone see the slides? Hang on, Sherry. Hang on one sec. Okay, now you got them? Does everybody see the slides? Okay, all right. Sherry, you can go. She can't hear us, just FYI, for whatever reason.
So you ready for me to go down? Okay, all right, good. Well, I am sorry about that complication, everyone, but as long as you can hear me, then I think we're good to go. And Debbie, you can just type me any questions, maybe through text afterwards if they have any questions for me, or if you, I guess I'll be able to see them on the screen. Anyway, we are talking tonight about the plan to add 274 people to your team in 18 months. This is absolutely my signature program and the one that I do most often as a keynote at national conferences or at a regional event or something like that. And it is actually a fail-proof plan. If you follow this plan, you're going to have a six-figure income in 18 months, guaranteed, if you follow this plan. But as we begin to go through this plan tonight, you're also going to see that it's a very aggressive plan, and so some people will choose not to follow it. It's just more work than they want to do, and that's totally okay. That's the beautiful thing about this business, is you can work it any way that you want. This is simply a plan for explosive growth, but I'm also going to show you how you can take it down a notch and have growth, but a little bit slower growth, and then I'll take it down a notch and show you how to just work in maintenance mode. So if you're a director and you're happy there, you can just follow that plan and maintain director, but it'll be very clear when we're done. And so let's go ahead and get started, because I know we have a lot of content to cover, and I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next slide here. And you'll see a quote by John Wooden, who is actually one of my favorite authors, super famous professional basketball coach and just a really wonderful speaker. And one of the quotes from his book says, "Those who aspire to be leaders can do it, and those who wish to become much better leaders can also do it." And I love this quote because it's 100% true. I've never met anybody in the 30+ years that I've been in this industry that could not be a leader if they wanted to. I've met people that chose not to be in leadership, which is, again, absolutely fine, but I've never met anybody that can not only be a leader, be a great leader, but be a top leader. So what I love about this business is that anybody that is willing to do the work can get there. You don't have to be beautiful, you can be beautiful. You don't have to be brilliant, you can be brilliant. You don't have to have a college education, but you can have a college education. It's just anybody, whatever personality, shape, size, it doesn't matter. Anybody can be a leader in this industry. In fact, I am such a great example of that, because I am, for those of you who don't know me, I'm that girl that barely made it out of high school. And the reason I got out of high school with a degree, or graduated, is because I got credit from teachers who loved me. I had really fun teachers who I don't know why, but they just liked me. And they gave me credit for being a teacher's assistant. So I got my math credit that way. Even though I didn't take the class, I got credit. They gave me my math credit that way. And I got credits for cheerleading and PE and those kinds of things that you really didn't have to do a lot of thinking with to get out of high school. So I did get out of high school, and then I decided to go on to college, and kind of sad to say, but I flunked out in the very first semester, came back home, and went back to work in the restaurant industry, which I had done all through high school. And I stayed there for 13 years in the restaurant industry, working a lot of different aspects there. And then as my children were born, I decided to quit that job, and I did daycare for another 3 years, and then I found direct sales. And while I loved those other jobs, and I learned a lot of great customer service skills and sales skills through the restaurant work. I loved kids. I taught the 4-year-old Sunday school class for literally 24 years, and I loved kids. But neither one of those professions, if you will, would have given me the kind of lifestyle and income that this wonderful direct sales business has. And I wanted to share that story with you because it just says that anybody can do this. I'm a slow learner. I have to read the book several times, listen to the audio several times before it really sticks with me. So if I can do this, anybody can do it. And in fact, my coaching clients and different groups of people that I've worked with over the years have shown that not only can you do it as like I did, but they do it better and bigger and faster than I did. In fact, let's go to some success stories in these next few slides, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Sorry, I forgot. I have a few mantras that I want to share with you before we get to some of those success stories. And the first one is that we have to model something people want in every aspect of our business. If we want people to join us in the business, we have to model, even through our party presentation, that this is something that's really simple and easy to do, that anybody can do it. If we want people to follow us into leadership, we have to model something that people watch and say that I can do that. We have to model something if we want them to move up in leadership. So, I'm talking to the Debbie Bryes of the world, the executives, senior executives, and on up in those higher ranks. If you want people to follow you up through those ranks of leadership, we've got to continue to model something that people can see themselves doing and something that people want, both in our lifestyle and in the way that we work our business, so that it doesn't look so hard. And the third mantra is, if we're not talking about money all the time in this business, we're not talking about it enough. And that's one thing that I'm not going to talk about a lot on this call, because for time's sake, but in the future, we can really talk about different ways that we talk about the money in a way that is motivating and exciting, but not braggy, doesn't feel tacky, but feels good to us. But we need to talk about money all the time. That's what motivates people to join us, to move into leadership, and to move up through the ranks of leadership. So right from the get-go, I'm going to say, this will take you to a six-figure income and provide you with a lifestyle, this training, if you follow it, like nothing most of you have ever imagined. Okay, so Debbie, let's just go ahead and go to that second slide, third slide, if you will. And here you see several women with some success. And these were 6 women that were at a company called Do, Re, Mi, and You, where I was their brand new vice president of sales. And I was at the very first national conference with them in July of 2006. Never met me before, and I shared the plan with them that I'm going to share with you tonight. And here you see just 5 months later, and I say 5 months because they actually sold that company to Discovery Toys, and they already had a VP, so I moved on to a different company. But you can see how quickly, following this plan, the success that they had. And out of a room, it was a small startup company, and we only had about 50 people at that national conference. But of those 50, these 6 said, I'm going to follow this plan. And they did. And look what happened 5 months later. Not 18, but 5 months later, Amy, who was our #1 recruiter in the company, but it was like a revolving door. They just came in and they went right back out. So she really didn't grow beyond that team leader level. So when you see UL in Color Street, that means team leader. They called them unit leaders. And in July, her total volume, including her own sales, was 4,602. Within 5 months, by December, she had promoted up 2 levels. So we had unit leader, then we had senior unit leader, and then we had director. So she'd promoted up 2 levels and promoted out 2 leaders of her own, and had grown her volume by up to 24,000 from 4,000. So that's awesome, right? And then Heather lived in a little tiny town in Kansas. And I'm trying to share different stories where you can say, okay, that I can relate to that. That's like me. Little tiny town in Kansas. It was so small, they had 1 street light that only worked during school hours. So little tiny. She had to drive an hour and a half to get to a town big enough to support her business, and then an hour and a half back home just to get to those parties. Here she is in July with $6,351 in volume, counting her own. And by July, she also had promoted from team leader to director with 28,000. And promoted out 2 leaders. This is in 5 months. Wouldn't you love to see this kind of growth? Jen was our top leader when I got there. She was already a director, which, was in language that's like a senior director. So still not real high, but just a tiny little beginning company. But 14,500 in volume. By December, she had promoted to what was our top level there, and had 48,706 in volume. Had promoted 2 more leaders than she had from July. Patty lived in Detroit. I mean, I probably don't need to say anything else. It was in that year when everything had collapsed all over the country, and she's in one of the most depressed markets in the United States. $1,600 in volume. She's about to lose her team. She's running out of grace months. And 5 months later, she's a director, $28,000, $833 in volume, promoted out 2 leaders. Shari was our top seller, but just couldn't seem to promote leaders. And so she was at that mid-level of leadership. She's an advanced leader, advanced unit leader, and had $6,725 in volume. So good, solid seller, most between $3,000 and $8,000 in personal volume, but just couldn't get those leaders out. And in 5 months, she's following this plan. She's got 43,873. She's pretty much caught Jen, who was our top leader, in 5 months and promoted out 3 leaders in 5 months. Janine, pregnant mommy in California, $1,885 in volume, also a person in grace months about ready to lose her downline when she committed to following this plan. 5 months later, she's got 21,638, promotes out 2 leaders. Okay, so next slide. So here we see Martine. You know, I've coached Martine since 2008, so 11 years. In August, it will be 11 years that I've talked to Martine every week. But you can see how quickly she went from really tiny income to a very large income. She was, in your language, a team leader when I started working with her. $1,400 a month in income, and in 5 months, her income is $4,800. How many of you would like to see that kind of growth? And their company was about the same age as yours when I started working with Martine. It was right after I spoke at their national conference. And in 9 months, her income is $10,000, and in just over a year, it's $15,000. So you can see how quickly your income builds to that 6 figures if you just follow this fail-proof plan. And she says, we didn't add 274 people to my organization in 18 months. We added 365 to my director team. So that means anybody that's not under another leader. This is just her team and their recruits, but not under another team leader. So 365, plus all of the new team members that came from her other leaders' teams. And at 22 months, her income was $49,000. At her peak, it was $65,000 a month. And here we are 11 years later, and her income is still $45,000 a month. So it's dipped a little like it does in any company, but I know very few people that have maintained that kind of an income over $500,000 a year for the last decade or more. Okay, so next slide. You're going to see somebody that you're all pretty familiar with. This is my friend and yours, CJ Summers, and this is when I started coaching her at Jamberry, and she was a team leader. Same scenario, $1,400 a month to $27,000 in 6 months. And in her 7th month, that income jumped to over $36,000. Now she's done that exact same thing following this plan again at Color Street. So we don't need, you can look at all these numbers later if you like. But you can see that she did it at Jamberry following this plan, and now she follows the exact same plan here. Okay, so next slide, if you would, please, Debbie. Last success story, and then we're going to go into the plan. But these are different companies, different people, all just like you and I, that followed this plan and had huge success. This is Terry O'Neill. I coached her when I was on contract with Touchstone Crystal, and same kind of a scenario. She was making, let's see, her income was $1,500 and $15,000 in team volume and $2,200 in income. And from October to March, it grew to $49,000 in team volume, 5 leaders, and her income was $6,051. And then by May, it was $7,778. So from October to May, you can see how quickly her income grew. And that's a company that was quite a few years old when I got there. Not the hot company that Color Street is today, really big, the hottest company in the industry right now. So let's take advantage of where you're at and the success that Color Street is having and really maximize it with some structure. When I was talking with Debbie's leaders yesterday at retreat, CJ was right before me, and one of the things that I've said to CJ's organization for the last 2 years, and really anybody that I coach, is that we need a system that works for everyone. There's people at Color Street, and there were people at 31 Gifts, and there were people at Scentsy, and really any company that we could mention that had a lot of success, but they didn't have success in a way that is duplicatable, that anybody can follow and do it. For example, we've got somebody at Color Street that has a blog following of 12 to 15,000 people, and she recruits from that following, 12 to 15,000 people. How many of you have that? None, right? So that's not a system that people can follow. There's nothing wrong with using that following that she's got to recruit, but it's not something that we can take and say, I'll do that too. Or it might be somebody that's been in the industry for 30 years, like myself. You know, and if I went in the field with Color Street right now, I would have people joining me from the last 30 years that I've worked with in different companies, and I would grow really rapidly that way because I have all of this network. But is that something that I could teach you to do? No, because you don't have that 30 years of networking with people in the industry. So what I'm going to show you tonight is a plan that if you follow it, it will work. It's fail-proof. It's been proved by thousands and thousands of people. I've worked with literally thousands of people in groups like this, in team trainings, and in personal coaching, and as an executive, where they created this kind of income, just like these stories that you hear. It's fail-proof if you follow the plan. So let's go to the next slide and see what is that plan. And I want you to think of this as a recipe for success. You know, if you're trying to make a cake and you put flour and water in a bowl and you mix it and you mix it and you put it in the oven and you open the oven 30 minutes later, or, you know, the right amount of time, are you going to have a cake? No, you're not, because we left out some really important ingredients, right? It's the same with this plan. When this plan doesn't work, it's because people leave out pieces that they don't like. I like this piece, and this piece, but I'm not going to really follow this piece. And so the plan doesn't work. Even when I'm speaking at an event, people will come to my table and they'll say, I hold 8 parties a month, but I'm not growing like this. And I'll say, well, what's your attendance like? Okay, that might be the miss. They don't have the attendance there. Or, you know, how many are you recruiting each month? And that might be the miss. But this recipe, if you follow it, will give you that 6-figure income in 18 months. It works every single time. So the first is hold 8 nail bars a month. And remember, this is the plan for explosive growth. So we'll show you a different plan and then a different plan, kind of A, B, and C. 8 nail bars a month is the key to explosive growth. In fact, when I'm working with someone, they'll say, I'm just not growing. It's almost always either their party count is not there, it's not right, or they're not getting their new stylist off to a good start. That's almost always one of the 2 misses. So that 8 nail bars a month is super important to that explosive growth. And we'll talk about why in just a second. The next is use effective hostess coaching to get at least 8 guests in attendance. And that's also important because that takes us to number 3. That allows us to go into every nail bar with a recruiting focus. And most of us don't. We might think we do, but most of us don't. We get really excited when we have a $400 nail bar and, you know, a booking, or maybe 2 bookings. I'd love to see you get way more excited about a $300 nail bar and at least 2 bookings, but a recruit lead. We're not going to recruit from every nail bar, but we need to get those recruit leads so that we've got people to follow up with to get those recruits each month. So we want to go in with a recruiting focus, and we tend to have a sales focus. When you go in with that recruiting focus, where that's your singular focus, is to make sure you're walking out with a recruit lead. And then you're going to notice things like, you know, people who are asking a lot of questions, or if it's an in-home nail bar, you'll see people's eyes light up when you talk about the income, or we'll hear clues that will tell us why Color Street might feel a need for them. You know, while they're visiting with their friends, we hear things like, you know, my husband's hours just got cut, or gymnastics just went up, we might have to drop out, or my credit card debt's driving me crazy. If we're just listening, we'll hear clues that will tell us if we have a recruiting focus. Otherwise, those things can go right over our head. So we need that singular focus. The next is look for stylists that are willing to work a business. And I mean people that want to do nail bars. Not that they want to do 8. That's for you guys, you that want to move into leadership quickly, those that want to move up quickly, that's for you. But we do want people coming in that want to do nail bars. We're a party plan company. That's who we are. So if they just want to get their nail strips at a discount or just sell to their coworkers, that's not the person we're looking for. We're looking for people that want to do nail bars, and that's going to give us the best shot at having the success that this plan is designed to give you. And then next is offer the business opportunity to at least 3 people at every nail bar. 1 out of 10 will say yes. So if we're holding 8 and we're talking to 3 people at every nail bar, we're talking to 24 people. 1 out of 10 will say yes. There's your 2 recruits each month. And that's the number for explosive growth. We need 2 recruits each month. A good recruiter will get 1 recruit out of every 4 nail bars. So 8 nail bars, talk to 3 people at each one, you'll get your 2 recruits each month. We don't need 5, we don't need 10, we just need 2. And you'll have this explosive growth, as you'll see in some visuals that we're going to go through in just a second. And so that's one of the big pieces that I see missing when we're not getting those recruits, is we're not talking to 3 people individually. Just like bookings, we have to ask the individual for that party. Same thing with recruits. We've got to talk to the individuals. And the next, super important, this is one of the 2 misses when I'm working with people closely, and we can figure out why they're not promoting leaders. Get your stylist off to a strong start. And that's a whole nother training that we won't go into tonight, because it takes, there's a whole plan there, just like this plan. So tonight we're really covering the pieces, the recipe, and then at another time we can come together and talk about how we do each of these different pieces. So get your stylist off to a strong start. And if you do this right, you'll get 1 leader out of every 6 recruits. So you're getting some really powerful numbers tonight, aren't you? A good recruiter gets 1 recruit out of every 4 nail bars. We need to talk to 10 people to get a yes. So we talk to 3 people at every nail bar. And a good number of leaders is 1 leader out of every 6 recruits. These are really good measuring points. And then next is teach others to work this plan. So when you've got somebody on your team that says, I want to be a team leader, great. We have a plan that will get you there in 30 to 60 days. This is their plan. Hold 8 nail bars a month. Do effective host coaching, go into every nail bar. So we just teach them this exact plan. And then last is model success for your stylist through your personal business. Because if you are a leader, just know this, they will follow your lead. If you're holding 4 nail bars a month and recruiting 1, then that's what your leaders will do. If you're holding 6 and recruiting 1.5, then that's what your leaders will do as well. So if we model this plan, then our future leaders and our leaders will follow this plan, and we'll see everyone getting the same kind of foolproof success that you are, because they see you doing it. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. We're going to look at a visual here that shows you the very beginnings of what we're going to see in large numbers in just a second. So when you as the leader, you're a team leader, and you promote out a leader, and you follow this plan that we're going to see tonight, and you show your team how to follow this plan and become just a supporter of the Shari plan, then when you promote that leader, you will average 2 leaders from her. She'll promote 2. And I'd love to say that leader will promote 6 or 8 or 10, but we're talking about averages. And a lot of leaders get to that team leader level or that director level, and they're really comfortable there, and they just stop. They stop working their business in a sense that they would grow. So some will promote 2 leaders, some will promote none, some will promote 10, but you'll average 2. That's just the number that we see statistically of the people that I've worked with who follow this plan. And because it's a system that works for everybody and we all get the same results, then those 2 leaders will also average 2 leaders. So you promote 1, she promotes 2, and they each promote 2. Basically, you promote 1 and you get 6 more for free because they built them. But the flip side is if you don't promote 1, you get 0. 0 promotions from you, 0 promotions everywhere. Okay, so let's go to that next slide and look at some formulas that we just want to keep in mind. And the first one, I need to put my glasses on for this one. You and your future leaders. So if you are a future leader right now, you're going to hold 8 nail bars a month. You want 8 guests at each. 64 guests a month is what you're getting in front of. Can you imagine that, getting 2 recruits out of 64 people that you're in front of, right? So 2 recruits a month, that's 6 recruits a quarter. And from each of these 6 recruits, even though we are doing all the right things, you're still going to see these kinds of statistics. I kind of took a worst case scenario here so that I get everyone's buy-in. Even if 2 do nothing, even though you did the right things to get them off to a strong start, 2 do nothing, 3 sell $500, but 1 holds a launch plus 4, so 5 nail bars, and has $2,500 in sales in their first month. This is our target. Just 1 out of 6. That's what we just need. 1 out of 6 to do what we teach them to do and have a strong start. And there's your next leader. Your next new big seller is your next leader. Try getting a team leader out of somebody that's doing bonus qualified. 1 nail bar a month. They'll be trying to get to leader forever. They won't even think they want leader because it just feels like they're not ready for that themselves. They're not even comfortable doing their own nail bars. So these are the kind of numbers you're going to see following this plan. Let's go to the next slide. Formula 2, 8 nail bars, 8 guests, 64 guests a month. That's $4,000 in sales a month if they're $500 average nail bars, which is the industry average. 35% commission, that's $1,400 in total income in commission. So you can see how quickly following this plan, your income will go up just based on your commissions. And then 12 months times that 4,000 is 48,000 in annual sales. 2 recruits a month, 24 recruits. So really solid numbers, but not over the top crazy numbers. We're just doing 2 nail bars a week. That's 5 hours a week in party time. Okay, so next slide, Debbie. So at the end of 3 months, if you follow this plan, you're holding 8, you're recruiting 2 a month. At the end of this first quarter, you've got 6 recruits that you brought in. And as we explained in the formulas, one of those 6 is going to have a great start. She becomes your future leader at the end of 90 days. She's done her nail bars, she's comfortable doing them, she's excited, she's making money, she's ready to recruit. She becomes that person that follows you in this plan. And so you go to the next slide and you'll see what happens at the end of the next 3 months. So now we're 6 months in. At the end of 3 months, a lot of my coaching clients will say, gosh, I feel like I'd be further along than I am, because they've got 6 people and they wanted, 50. But nope, you're right on track. You can see as we go through these slides, it starts out slow and then it just starts to compound and compound and compound because you're building leaders and they're building leaders, and it just gets crazy exciting. So at the end of the next 6 months, and I want to apologize ahead of time, Debbie, I was kind of running through these slides as I got ready to prepare for your call, and I realized I did not change these to really reflect Color Street. So when you see that first line of people there, that is that's your personal recruits. Instead of skip the Gen 1, which really stands for Generation 1, which that's what some companies call it. So my apologies that I didn't change this. But that's going to be, so really it's your level 1 and your level 2. But those green people are recruited by your future leader there that you see, the green lady. 3 months later, now she's been holding 2 a week. She's been recruiting 2 a month. She's got 6 at the end of the next 6 months. Okay, so let's go to 9 months. And it just keeps going this way. So over the next 90 days, you promote another leader. 1 out of those 6 that you recruited decides to become a future leader, and she moves into leadership over the next 90 days. But because it's a system, again, that works for everybody, your green leader did exactly the same thing. Of her 6 recruits, 1 moves into future leader and becomes a leader herself over the next 90 days. You at Color Street could see these numbers moving faster as far as titles because you only need 3 people to promote to team leader. At some companies it's 6, at some companies it's 4. So you could see these rank changes even more quickly at Color Street. So now you can see they're delineated by color. So the red ladies are recruited by the red leader. The green ladies are recruited by the green leader. The yellow ladies are recruited by the yellow leader. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And you see at the end of 12 months, you've got all of these people on your team, but look at all these different colors. That first line of people, the green, the burgundy, the purple, those are all your direct leaders, people that you've recruited and promoted to leader. And then we see the other colors, the yellow, the pink, and the other green, that sagey kind of green, those were promoted by the leaders that you promoted. So you can see we're building more and more leaders, but you've only built 3. Those first 3, green, burgundy, and purple. You've only built 3, but look at all these different colors that represent team leaders on your team. And if you were the only one recruiting, all you'd have are those people in that first line. You wouldn't have the 30 that were recruited by those leaders and the 22 that were recruited by those leaders. And then we go to the next slide and we see at 15 months, look at this. And again, if you're the only one recruiting, all you've got is that first line of people. We're teaching people how to get their party counts up, how to recruit on their own. And if we're just filling those holes for them, then all these recruits aren't coming in. But when we teach them how to recruit, you've got all these people coming in every single month. And these are real numbers. People that are following this plan will tell you their numbers are exact. I just got a screenshot from CJ that she said, it was a message to CJ from one of her people. And she said, I'm looking at Shari's numbers and they are scary. I lined them up against mine and she's 100% right. My numbers match her numbers exactly following this plan. And I hear that all the time. So because we've taught people to recruit and we're building future leaders and they're building future leaders and ultimately leaders, then we've got 48 people that were recruited by our leaders and 52 that were recruited by their leaders, and 6 that were recruited by their leaders. And this is at the end of 15 months. And then we go to 18 months, and here's where we see that magical 274 people. At the end of 18 months, that first line, that's your recruits, 26 people. That's it, 26. So if you are the only one recruiting, if you're not teaching people how to recruit, how to get their party count up and meet the people to recruit, then this plan doesn't work. But when we do that, when we empower people and they promote to team leader and they build team leaders and they build team leaders and they build team leaders, look at this compound growth that just goes way down to your 6th level. And all you did was recruit 26. 26 of those were yours, 2 a month over 18 months. 70 people were recruited by your recruits, your leaders. 100 people were recruited by those leaders. 54 recruited by those, 24 recruited by their leaders, for a total of 274. Now look what's interesting here is that your Gen 2 has 100 people on it. That's your biggest line. And if we follow this plan, that's where your greatest income will be. It doesn't matter if it's Color Street, 31 Gifts, Party Light, it doesn't matter. If you follow this plan, even though your override is smaller the deeper you get, that's always your highest income because that's where we see the massive amounts of growth. I remember coaching Jenny Hillenberg. She made $100,000 a month. And we were talking about this one day, and I said, and they would call this their Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, meaning their leaders, their leaders, their leaders. So that bottom line of leaders, that 3rd level of leaders. I said, Jen, your largest income, even though it was 1%, 1%. So that's where your biggest income is. She said, no way, it's only 1%. I said, go look. So she got online and she looked, she said, oh my gosh, you are so right. That's where my biggest income is. So that's why this plan works so beautifully, because we are building leaders and they're building leaders and they're building leaders. And so we've got all this recruiting going all the way down. Okay, so let's go to the next slide and see what happens when we dilute this plan a little bit. Here's what I've discovered is people will say, okay, That's a six-figure income. I'd be happy with $50,000 a year. So I'm just going to cut this plan in half. You know what? It doesn't work that way. So I wanted to show you, and I'm telling you, these numbers are scary, scary accurate. I'm always looking at these numbers with my coaching clients, with different companies that I'm on contract with, and I promise you that these numbers are accurate. So what if we do that? What if we decide, well, I know my growth will be slower, and that's okay if I make less money. So I'm going to dilute this down, and instead of booking 10 nail bars a month to allow for cancellations to hold those 8 to a week, and recruit 2, I'm going to drop that down to I'll book 8 to allow for cancellations to hold 6 to recruit 1.5 a month, meaning 1 out of every 4, right? So it's 1 this month and 2, and then 1, then 2 to kind of even out to 1.5. So when we do that, yep, we've taken 2 nail bars a month off of our schedule, which means that we probably added back in 2 nail bars a month. That would be 10 hours a month. So 2.5 hours a week is what we've added back into our life by taking those 2 nail bars off of our schedule. And so at the end of 3 months, we don't see a dramatic change here. We've gone from having 6 recruits at the end of 3 months to having 4. But then we go to 6 months and we see that instead of having, sorry, go ahead, Debbie. Instead of having 16, we have 7. And what's happening here is that the speed of the leader determines the pace of the pack, because they will do what you do. If you're following the 8-2, 10-8-2, book 10, hold 8, recruit 2 a month, that's what your leaders will do. If you dilute that down to book 8 to hold 6 to recruit 1.5, then that's what your leaders will do. So you'll see that the recruiting numbers drop from 2 to 1.5 all the way down. So instead of 16, we have 7. But then we go to 9 months, and we see that instead of 36, we have 13. And then we go to 12 months, and we see that instead of 70, we have 23. So this is plan B, and there's no right or wrong plan. The 10-8-2 is plan A. This is plan B, so you're still growing. You can see that you're still growing. It's just not as explosive growth. It's slow growth, but you're still growing. But instead of 70, we have 23, and then we go to 15 months, and instead of 148, we have 38. So we've added 2.5 hours a week back into our life, but you can see it really does impact how rapidly we grow. And then we go to the next slide. We see at 18 months, instead of having 274 people on our team, we have 62. And again, I promise you that these numbers are accurate. And this is plan B. You're going to grow, but you're going to have slower growth. So you just, it's just what works for you in your life. There's no right, no wrong. It's just, I want you to know that I don't want to set you up to fail. I want you to know exactly what to do to have that kind of explosive growth that some of you want. And here will be an interesting piece of homework for you. After tonight's call, look over the last 12 months, or if you haven't been in that long, over the last 6 months, and look at how many nail bars you've done and how many recruits you've brought in and how many leaders you've gotten. And I think that you'll see that this plan it plays true. I held 36 parties, so let's take 40. That's an even number. And I got 10 recruits. 1 out of every 4. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, ladies, and we'll look at what happens when we do drop this down to that holding 4 a month, which is, honestly, it's more nail bars than most people at Color Street are doing, because we tend to focus on bonus qualified. Even as leaders, that's a number that we focus on. But industry-wide, 4 parties is less than even most leaders are doing. Most leaders in our industry are doing 2 parties a month, and they're struggling to hold title. In your language, they'll go from director back to team leader, or from team leader to senior stylist, and then back up to team leader, but they struggle to hold rank because they're doing even less than 4. So if we're holding 4, this is what I call maintenance mode. 4 parties a month, 1 recruit, And so if you are a team leader, you'll maintain team leader. If you're a director, you'll maintain director. If you're an executive, you'll maintain executive, but you'll find you're not moving. You're not moving up from team leader to director, director to senior director, and so on. This is maintenance mode. So we look at how this impacts the number of recruits we're getting, and we see at the end of 3 months, instead of having 6, we have 3. So we go to the next slide, and we see that instead of 16, we have 4. And then we go to the next slide, and at 9 months, instead of 36, we have 9. And then we go to the next slide, and we see instead of 70 at 12 months, we have 15. So now we've added 5 hours a week, because we've taken 4 nail bars a month off of our calendar, gone from 8 to 4. So we've added now 10 hours a week back, or sorry, 5 hours a week back into our schedule, and it's affecting our growth. So instead of 70, we have 15, and then we go to 15 months, and instead of having 148, we have 23. You and your leaders are now not doing enough nail bars to get the recruits to replace the recruits that are leaving, and have enough in addition to grow. We're just replacing those leaving stylists. In fact, I was talking to an executive, not one of Debbie Bry's executives, but an executive in another lineage the other day, and she said, I've got more people dropping off than coming in. And so she didn't hit rank that month. She's a brand new coaching client of mine. And so then we go to 18 months, and instead of having 274, we have 32. So big difference. We've added 5 hours a week back into our schedule, but you can see it really does impact the number of stylists that are going to be coming into our organization and the number of leaders that we're promoting. So even if we're getting 1 leader out of every 6 recruits, when we take 32, it's basically we have 5 leaders, and over 18 months we've lost more than 5 leaders probably. So let's go to that next slide. So some of you are thinking, okay, this is starting to make a little bit of sense. The power of consistency is one of those things that works in so many ways. When we're holding, so maybe that number 3 plan, ABC plan, that booking 6 to hold 4 to recruit 1. Maybe that's the one that feels the most comfortable to you. That's maintenance mode, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it also keeps you at a place where you are comfortable doing your nail bars. When we drop to a place where we're doing less than 1 nail bar a week, we get out of our zone, we get out of sync, and it becomes more awkward for us to even do those nail bars. And so we tend to sell less, book less, and recruit less. But if we're holding at least 1 a week, we're consistent, it's all going to flow easier for us. So that's one of the things that the power of consistency will do for you. Next slide, Debbie. Some of you are thinking, okay, this makes sense, but I'm worried about my family. I'm worried about spending that much time away from my family. Even if I do Facebook parties, that's two times a week that I've got to step away from my family and do those nail bars. Yeah, it's true, but I want to try and keep this as simple as I can. It's 5 hours a week of party time. That's it, out of the whole week that we are, working our business. It's just 5 hours of party time a week, even if we do the 10-8-2, book 10 to hold 8 to recruit 2. But the reason I have a picture of my family here, and those are my 3 kiddos and my grandkids, is because these kids, now the far left, that's my daughter-in-law, but the other 3, those are my kids. And they were raised by a mama that worked 60, 80 hours a week almost their entire life. When I was in the restaurant world, by the time the kids were born, I was in management, so I'm at the restaurant all the time. And then I went into direct sales, and I was doing tons of parties. And then I went into top-level leadership, and I didn't even know about working 20 hours a week then. So we were all working crazy hours. And then I went into corporate, and I'm flying all over the country and gone a lot and working tons of hours. So they were raised by a mama that was gone a lot. I was able to schedule my time where I could be home for important events like volleyball games and swim meets and wrestling matches and those kinds of things. But I was gone a lot. And yet, all three of those kids are amazing kids, even though mom was gone a lot. Jillian on the right, when she went to college, this was a time in my life when everything fell apart and I couldn't afford to help her at all with college. So she worked a full-time job while going to college and maintained a 3.8, what's the word I'm looking for? GPA while she's working full-time and carrying a full load. And then she went to Grant Thornton accounting firm after that, and they hired her. She was the single recruit, the single hire out of a pool of 300 candidates. And they said, we chose you because anybody that can work full-time, carry a full load, and maintain a 3.8 is somebody we want on our team. And then from there, she went to Starbucks International, and then she stayed home and was a mommy for a little bit, and now she's back working for Point One, or I can't remember the exact name of the company, but it's a very, very successful accounting firm, and she's there making a great salary again. My daughter Carly, she worked for Costco for a while until I stole her away, and then she was my assistant for 9 years. She quit last May as my assistant to be a Color Street stylist. That's, the only thing I don't love about Color Street is I lost my assistant to Color Street, but she is doing super well there. But as my assistant, I got to tell you, that girl was my right arm. I mean, she went from not knowing anything about my world other than being my daughter to handling my schedule, making changes on my website, and traveling with me to events, and just so many. I could just go on and on. But she was my right arm. And I'm pretty much lost without her. I miss her so much. And then Reed is my son, and he was also at Costco, and I stole him, and he worked for me for many, many years, and then went back to work for Costco in the travel department and became a manager in the travel department, and then was promoted to IT, and now he's got another promotion in IT. He's just doing it just incredibly well there. They're just all big successes, all great, wonderful kids, even though mommy was gone a lot. And I share that with you because the good news is, and go ahead and change the slide, Debbie, is that's not for you. You don't have to do that. All it takes is for team leaders and directors, 10 hours a week, counting your party time. That's it, 10 hours a week. And I can teach you how to do that. When you promote to senior director and executive, that's going to jump up to 15 hours a week, including 2 parties a week. So that's it for your work time. And then senior execs and national execs and on up, it's 20 to 25 hours. You all know CJ Summers. She's been my coaching client for 6 years. She works 20 hours a week, and she's a national executive director. So it never gets worse than that. It never gets harder than that. So you can have this kind of success working part-time. And then if we go to that next slide, it's beautiful because you can have this kind of success and be a model for your children, for your teammates, for your friends and family that says when you set goals and you're persistent and you're determined and you believe that you can do this and you work hard, meaning somewhere between 10 and 25 hours a week for what you want, you have success. And I believe that my kids are the successes that they are in the business world because they learned that from their mom. They saw this in their mom, and they all do these things, and they're great employees and much loved by their employers. So I think that's the last slide, isn't it? Nope. Okay. So we've talked about things tonight that might be a very different way of thinking about working your Color Street business, and not only thinking about how you work your Color Street business, but actually how you do work your Color Street business. But I'll wrap up with this. When we change the way we think, our perceptions, our mental decisions, then we're going to change the way we work our business. And then we're going to change the results that we get dramatically. So it's a different way of thinking, a different way of working, but it will get you the results that I know at least some of you want and just haven't been able to quite grasp it because we didn't know exactly what to do. Well, now you do. So there's a explosive growth plan, there's a slow growth plan, and then there's a maintenance plan. So whichever works for you. And I'm so sorry I can't hear you, but is there any questions that
Can you hear me?
Thoughts?
No. Let me see. Can you hear me? No? All right, well, if anybody has questions for Shari, since I'm not
You
sure
can
why.
type in a question if you want,
Type in
guys.
the
And I
question down at the bottom if you want, and she could answer questions that way. For some reason, she can't hear us. But I mean, like she said, it's great numbers to see written down for you guys to set goals if that's what you want. I mean, you see it.
Oh, my pleasure, Dar. Thank you.
So it's factual numbers. It's not like she's just made this formula up. So depending what you want, and I love seeing the differences of the different levels, and all are okay. But if that's what you want is the big team, which I know some people do, that's the path to follow. So it looks like everyone's pretty quiet for questions. Right now they're probably drawing out their little people, color coding them, right? So, okay, you guys. Oh, you're welcome, Dar. All right. Oh, we got someone who's ready to implement it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Shari. I appreciate it. And everybody, you know, reach out to us leaders if you have questions about this. I'm going to post the recording for those of you guys watching it later, that you guys can watch this later or go back to it and refer to it anytime you want to look at the different numbers. All right. All right. Let me type bye to Shari.
I love your glasses, by the way.
Thank you. All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Debbie. Thanks so much.
Yep. All right. Good night, everyone.